If we could talk to the animals, learn all their languages, maybe take an animal degree. If I conferred with our furry friends, man to animal, think of the amazing repartee. If I could walk with the animals, talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals, and they could talk to me.
Hello and welcome to Pet Watch, a monthly program devoted to the Williamson County Animal Control and Adoption Center. I'm Debbie Sims and I'll be your host today. I serve as Public Information Coordinator for our local county shelter. My guest today is Ann Logan. Hi, Ann.
Hi there.
Glad to have you here. Ann is the chairperson of Williamson Animal Services, a 501c3 organization that supports our shelter. And we welcome you here today. I think a lot of our county residents aren't familiar with Williamson Animal Services. Can you tell us how your organization came about and what your purpose is?
I would love to do that. It's one of my favorite subjects. We really came about from beginning with Mayor Anderson, our then mayor and our current mayor, who called together a group of people, invited us to join a task force. And he charged that task force with looking at all things about the shelter and wanted us to consider all possibilities, not limit ourselves at all in what we could imagine and work for the shelter to become. He said he would like to see it be known as the best shelter in the state. So we took him very seriously. It was a great challenge and also a wonderful opportunity, especially for us animal advocates who had loved and cared about the shelter for such a long time. So after the task force completed a couple of years of work, we decided instead of just ending, we would form a 501c3. That became Williamson Animal Services.
That's great, and I think it's wonderful that our mayor recognizes the fact that county government can do so much as far as adequately funding the shelter and its operations. But there are many things that go above and beyond the normal daily operations that would really enhance the euthanasia rate and lowering that and becoming a no-kill shelter. And there's so many goals, enhancing the environment for the animals. There's so much more that can be done, and in the day-to-day operations of the shelter are under county auspices, but your organization works with the shelter and hand in hand in working on these projects.
Absolutely. We are not in charge of anything. We are simply there to help in whatever ways we can think of, and whatever ways the shelter and Laura Chevalier, of course, is the director, the things that she points us to as needs, and she sits on the board of Williamson Animal Services. So we are very closely connected. We communicate all the time, and that's our purpose, is just to fill in meaningful ways that are just a little bit outside the scope of the program as it is.
Did the task force develop a mission statement for the group or some goals, or what did the task force actually do when it was enacted?
We did some very significant things, I think. One of the most significant was we took on the challenge of reviewing and revising our rules and regulations governing dogs and cats in Williamson County. Okay. That's was a yellow booklet.
Yes.
Now it's a kind of a neon booklet.
Yes.
But we looked at that in every word in that, along with the county attorney working with us every step of the way.
And several of the commissioners, like Ms. Hayes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And then that had to go, once we completed our recommendations, they then went to the commission for their review and approval.
Right.
So that was a very significant thing. Another thing that we came up with was a spay-neuter clinic concept within the shelter. For the first time ever, we suggested, and again, Mayor Anderson was fully supported this, let us go forward with it, that the shelter veterinarian offer some surgeries to Williamson County citizens who would meet certain financial qualifications.
Right.
So we created an entire protocol and the financial structure that people would need to fit into, and made those recommendations to him, and he approved them. And so the shelter began for the first time doing surgeries for community members
Right.
who couldn't afford to get those surgeries done on their own.
Right.
And that, of course, helps then prevent litters,
Yeah.
unwanted puppies and kittens that either end up in one kind of problem or another, many times back in the shelter as people surrender them to the shelter when
Right.
they're born and they're unwanted.
Right.
So that has a great impact on the numbers that come in to the
Sure.
shelter, and therefore on the issue of getting that euthanasia rate, as you said, to a best-in-class level, which the shelter has done.
Right, and that surgery program, the spay-neuter program, is enacted now. It's very active. I think about one or 2 days a week, our veterinarian is involved with spay-neuters one after the other, doing several, and I don't know, 40 or 50 a day probably, for members of the public. And it is hard to convey that, but this program is for members of the public who already have a pet, who meet the income requirement,
Right.
could call the shelter, discuss it, and schedule a surgery. And I think it's so popular, we schedule them about a month away right now.
Yeah. They do have to book out, and that leads to another significant thing that Williamson Animal Services has done and is doing. We are funding a second vet tech. It's a part-time position, but it is a second one. The program has, of course, the full-time
Right.
veterinarian and a full-time vet tech. We fund a part-time second vet tech for the purpose of being sure that the spay-neuter clinic, at the clinic in general, can
Right.
keep up with the enormous workload that it
Right.
has, providing for shelter animals first, and then adding this load of doing
Yeah.
community surgeries.
It's
So-
wonderful to see, to be there on the day when citizens are bringing in their animals early in the morning. It's an outpatient procedure,
Yes.
so to speak. You drop your animal off in the morning of the day that you've made your appointment. They are spayed or neutered, and then they recover, and you pick them up after 5 o'clock in the
Later that-
afternoon.
yes.
And it's free if you meet the income requirement, and in Williamson County, I believe it's $55,000 or less for your household. So it's wonderful to see a concrete program that we know that animal will never produce more offspring that will come back to us, because we've all seen the crisis that occurs every year with, especially in the cat population, of unwanted kittens. And I think we're seeing an impact lately of this spay-neuter program. Do you not see that is coming to fruition, that we're actually seeing less of an impact of the kittens in the springtime?
Yeah, we all feel like we can see that, and especially when you consider how much the county has grown, because the pet overpopulation problem is in direct relationship to your human population. So when
Sure.
your human population grows, your pet overpopulation grows as well. So when you consider how fast Williamson County has grown, and our numbers coming into the shelter are actually dropping, so that means those lines are crossing, and that really is significant.
That's wonderful. And you told me a statistic about how many cats or kittens are born each year for each person, or what was that comparison you made?
The numbers are that, and it shows us how essential spay-neuter is. For every human born, 15 dogs are born. And for every human born, 45 cats
Wow.
are born. Now, and if you think about it, that makes sense. Dogs can have litters a couple of times a year, and when they do, they have 4, 5, or 10 in the litter.
Right.
Whereas human beings, it takes 9 months, and most of the time it's 1.
Right.
So how is that math ever going to match up so that
No,
all those animals will
not.
have a human being who wants them and will love them. So you have to spay neuter. That has to be a foundation of any kind of control over your pet population.
And each person has to realize that they could be part of the solution by having their pet spayed or neutered. And if they don't, they're part of the problem, because I saw a statistic where 2 unaltered cats, a female and a male, if they were unaltered, could produce something like 400,000 offspring in 7 years. I thought, this has to be wrong. I checked some more sources, and I was right. If all of their offspring are never spayed or neutered, and they all keep producing every 3 to 4 months like a cat can, it's astronomical. 400,000. I wouldn't want to be responsible for that many kittens coming into the world, would you?
No, absolutely not. So you're right. The first thing that anybody can do is be sure that they get their own pet spayed or neutered. And obviously there are many things you can do beyond that, but your first responsibility is to your own pets. And it can be expensive. For some people, it's too expensive.
Right.
There are numerous resources, including the clinic and the surgeries we just talked about here, but also there are other groups.
There are other groups we can actually refer to if someone needs a spay neuter quicker than we can do it.
Yes.
I know we have resources that I will provide them at the shelter on by telephone.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to when the Williamson Animal Services Organization developed, and you kind of had a threefold purpose, our mission statement, and one was to support the Animal Control and Adoption Center here in town, and you've done some tangible things at the building, which is right next to Franklin High School. You came in with a lighting program that was quite innovative. Tell us about that.
Okay, that is sun tunnels, and probably a lot of people haven't heard of them. I really wasn't familiar with them myself. They are a kind of skylight. Right. And you use them where your roof is way a long distance from the ceiling of your room. So you've got a lot of attic above, and you can't just put in a skylight. So they put in sun tunnels, which have a tube that connects the ceiling of the room to the roof, and the light comes down through that tube. So they're called sun tunnels because they bring the sun through a tunnel. Well, we identified locations in the shelter, and there are many. The shelter has only a very few exterior walls that have windows. And so lots of internal space where animals spend most or all of their time had no natural light at all. Of course they had artificial light, but they didn't have natural light. And we all know how healthy and beneficial natural light is to life, whether it's people or animals. So we wanted to be able to light those internal spaces with natural light. So we provided a starting number of sun tunnels, and right now they're getting ready to, they're going to post at the county a bid for like 19, I believe it is, additional sun tunnels that we will fund.
Wow.
For the shelter.
And so it's free energy.
It is.
There's no electricity involved.
There's no electricity.
And I've seen
Absolutely.
them. They look like a little bit of a recessed light fixture that's constantly on.
Yes.
It's amazing the glow that comes out of them compared to the fluorescent fixture next to it. It's a whole different kind of light.
It's a totally different kind of light.
And it's totally amazing. It is.
And it actually seems to be soothing to the animals. We were thrilled with the response that we saw in how it kind of calmed animals to have that kind of lighting going on. So it's also, we consider it like a health issue with the animals, because of course a shelter is somewhat of a stressful environment. You work very hard to overcome that, but it is a stressful environment, and so a lot of the things we do are designed to try to benefit the animals in that way, to reduce stress. The cat porch is one that we have done for cats. Would you like me to?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I think we now call it affectionately the catio instead of a patio. Because the cats love to go out on their porch.
Yes, my grandcats have a catio in their apartment as well. But the cat adoption room, the adult cat adoption room, has big windows that actually open out so you can walk out through them. And so a porch was built out off of that room, screened in, but it has a solid roof and a decking kind of floor. Well, we designed the walkways, pathways that the cats, so when they go out there, it's not just sit.
Right.
They actually have things to climb on, and cats love climbing and height.
Right.
So that is again, that is like a healthy, stress relieving kind of benefit.
Yeah, we've
for
had
our
some
cats.
cats that go up high in the catwalk.
Yes,
Yes, might as well call it that, and don't want to come down
I
because
know,
they're
it's-
so happy, and there's butterfly bushes around, and they can see people coming and going,
Yes.
and they're protected, and so that's a wonderful thing. Now, tell me about another thing that your group is doing is starting some pet food banks in Williamson County. Now, how did you start the pet food banks, and where are they, and who benefits from those?
Okay, well, the pet food banks began from something that we saw at our shelter, which was that we looked at data that was being gathered about incoming animals. About 50% consistently, year after year, 50% of the animals that are in our shelter walk through the door as owned animals. Their owners bring them and surrender them.
Right.
Well, if half of your population, half of the load that your shelter must care for, find new homes for, is surrendered animals, we began thinking, okay, what are the things we might be able to do about slowing that, that flow of animals into the shelter? And so we asked the director, would you gather data on why people are surrendering, so we can look at the reasons and we'll see if we can address them. And one of them was financial stress. Feeding animals, of course, is costly. So the idea was, okay, what if we were able to provide food to people who need that, benefiting their pocketbooks, benefiting the health of the animals, and hopefully removing one of the reasons that animals are surrendered. So the pet food bank was born, and what we decided was we would go to groups that already distribute food to people and ask them if they would add pet food from us, which we would donate to them, to the food, the human food that they were already donating to people. So in Williamson County, Grace Works is our pantry. We used to have Helping Hands in Fairview, but now Helping Hands in Fairview is Grace Works West.
Okay.
So those are the two, everything that Grace Works here in Franklin does and their Grace Works West operation in Fairview are the Williamson County locations where if people are participating with either of those pantries and all of the resources that they offer, they can now also access pet food that will be donated. Mars Pet Care is donating that food to us.
Okay.
So they are our fantastic corporate partner, obviously completely essential. Without the pet food, we have nothing. So they donate the pet food to us, and then we make it available to pantries. We do go outside of Williamson County with pantries that we have relationships with. One other pantry we have, almost forgotten, I'm so glad I didn't, College Grove. We have a Williamson County pantry in College Grove. So we have Franklin and Fairview and College Grove locations where they get food from us and they make it available to their clients.
That's wonderful, and the Mars Pedigree family of food manufacturers being headquartered here and have a brand new campus in Spring Hill. We have lots of great relationships with them through both your group and the shelter.
Absolutely, they are fabulous.
And I would imagine
amazing.
that seniors benefit quite a bit because they're being on a fixed income, and if they're struggling with their own food costs, they're definitely struggling with their pets. And I was reading something the other day that 61% of seniors report that their loneliness is a huge factor, and that a pet makes a real difference in their well-being and outlook and their health. So we don't want those people to not be able to afford their companions, and it affects their overall health if they have to surrender their pet. It's heartbreaking.
Oh.
And you wouldn't want that to happen. So that's another upside to preventing a surrender at our shelter.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point about seniors and anyone really who is lonely in
Right.
this world.
Right.
There is nothing like the unconditional love that a dog or a cat can give you. It really changes people's lives. And of
Absolutely.
course changes the life of the animal. So that's why we so want people come to the shelter when you are thinking about adopting an animal, because they are fabulous. You will love the life that you have with them, and they will give you more than you can possibly imagine. So
yeah, it's wonderful to see a senior come in, especially and adopt one of our senior pets.
yes.
Who senior pets often get overlooked because people think, oh, I want it to run and jump and whatever. Well, not everybody wants that.
Right.
Some people want a lap dog, a couch potato, we call some of them, or a cat that is comforting and that kind of thing, and they're not able to get outside and run around at the dog park. So, just like people have limitations and desires, so do these dogs and cats.
Absolutely, and that match is a very important point. That's another thing that Williamson Animal Services has done. We funded a lot of the cost of a program that the shelter is using called Meet Your Match, and it's an ASPCA program
Right.
that evaluates the animals for their personality. Are they outgoing, energetic, or are they a little more shy? They really want, as you said, couch potato. They want to sit on the couch with you, and then you fill out a little thing that takes you through a process of kind of laying out, okay, what does my life look like?
Right.
And that helps match the person and their lifestyle with the animal and the lifestyle that will fit them. Because what you want is for that match to be good. It doesn't serve any of us well for you to get an animal that's a poor match for you. You're unhappy. If you're not happy, then your animal can't be happy. So that match is very important. So we funded that. There are materials that have to be bought, and the ASPCA comes in and does training for shelter staff and volunteers who are going to help talk with people and make sure those matches are good when they go out the door.
And I watched some of that. There's testing that actually goes on. So every animal gets pulled from the kennel, taken into a testing room, and they're tested for things like food aggression or how they respond to being left alone in a room. And some of them will clear the counter.
Yes.
And others will just sit there very docile and very calm. So you can kind of get the idea of what their basic personality is. Are they inquisitive? Do they start barking? Do they just sit compliantly and wait for you to come back? So people, I think, have gotten past that. Oh, everybody wants a puppy. I want a puppy. Well, that's not always great, and that's not always the best match for you. So I think it does our adult dogs a great service to get tested so that we know what the match is that we're making with people, and we can advise them on that.
Absolutely, which is a benefit really of adopting from the shelter, because that assessment is going to have been done and you can get a lot of information about that animal.
Well, that's another wonderful project that you've done. Another thing that your group does is works on legislation you worked with the county in developing rules and regulations for animals here in Williamson County, but on the state level you've been involved in advocating for animals. Tell me, what recently, I think in the last 6 months, there was state legislation regarding the treatment of animals that you all went to the state capitol and had some meetings about. What is your stand on the advocacy for animals at the state level, and what legislation could you bring to the attention of our viewers?
I think the single most important thing that is pending right now the legislature is not in session, so there's not activity going on, but something that happened a month or two ago was that a group that that is very focused on legislation is all that this group does. And I look to them a lot for leadership in that area because they put all of their time and energy on it.
Right.
They looked at the issue of how bills that are filed that are animal related, how those bills are assigned. A huge issue is that most animal bills, regardless of what kind of animal you're talking about, are assigned to agriculture committees in the House and the Senate. Well, agriculture committees are historically unfriendly places for animal-related legislation to go. So very often, a bill that is actually, it's about companion animals. It could be a puppy mill bill. It'll get assigned to an agriculture committee where it will die. It will never get through, it won't have an opportunity
because
to
their focus is on farming animals and that kind of thing.
So it's not a good place for bills to go. So what this group is pushing the leadership of the House and the Senate to do is assign animal-related bills to the appropriate committee. If it is a farm animal bill, it would be appropriate for it to go to an agriculture committee. But if it isn't, then assign it where it's more appropriate, and then things will actually reach the floor of the House and Senate to be voted on. They don't even make it there because of the way they're assigned. So that is something, it's not a specific about a specific bill or piece of legislation, but it is something that would impact all.
But it sounds like it's just a general logjam for domestic animal and pet related and abuse situations in puppy mills, you named. There's so many issues involved with pets and domestic animals that we don't need them to go to that committee and die at the agriculture committee. So if anybody's interested, they should look up who their state legislators are and encourage them to direct those bills to places where they'll actually be acted on.
Yes, and I can actually give a website that they can go to if you would like.
Sure.
It is tnanimalprotection.org.
Okay,
So tnanimalprotection.org, and there they will find a wealth of information about the legislators, who they are, what bills they have sponsored, what their record is on voting, and when you're in session, they will run down legislation and what bills are pending and what the status of them is. Give you actions that you can take, ways you can support. So that for me is the single best source of all things legislation.
Ann, thank you for being my guest today and telling us all about Williamson Animal Services. I hope that you will friend our shelter on Facebook. Williamson County Animal Shelter is the name that it's under, or call us at 790-5590 anytime you have a question. If you'd like to adopt an animal, volunteer, or learn more about the support organization that Ann told us about today. I hope to see you next time on Pet Watch.
If we could talk to the animals, learn all their languages, maybe take an animal degree. If I conferred with our furry friends, man to animal, think of the amazing repartee. If I could walk with the animals, talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals.
Too many of Tennessee's students drop out of high school. If you ask them why, you'll probably hear they just can't keep up because they don't have the reading skills. Success in school is based on success in reading, and learning to read starts with hearing words. With young children, storybook reading, particularly family storybook reading, plays a special and important role.
Had a great, what's the last word?
Mom.
Good.
Have fun with reading. Read the directions on the box and bake a cake together. Create a scrapbook, write a family cookbook, or a newsletter.
That looks like you.
What about the triangle?
A triangle face?
Work with your child to cut coupons and make a grocery list. Write thank you notes to grandparents. Read a book about different occupations. Then ask your child what they would like to be when they grow up.
You could be, maybe. What about an eye doctor, just like your granddaddy?
My eye doctor is much more. He works with some glasses.
He does work with some glasses.
Don't underestimate the impact that reading can have on your child's future. Choose success. Choose reading. This Choose Success moment has been brought to you by the Middle Tennessee P16 Council. For more information about children and reading, contact your local school system.